Hi, my name is Barry Cinnamon, CEO of Cinnamon Energy Systems. Welcome to this webinar on the end of net metering in California. Now, historically, solar's made a tremendous amount of sense for both homes and businesses, especially with net metering and especially as energy costs keep going up. As you can see in the graph on the left, and this is information from the Energy Information Administration, it's really good information. Nobody talks about it because the utilities and the government kind of bury it because they don't like the results. But over the last 15 years, from 2000 to 2015, rates went up by 2.4%. These are average California PG&E homeowner electricity rates. Then from 2016 to 2020, electricity rates started going up faster at a rate of 7.5% a year. And then in 2021 and 2022, the last couple of years, in each of the last 2 years, 2021 and 2022, electricity rates went up 14%. They're going to go up again in 2023, and experts expect that rates will continue to rise because of inflation and because of added control in spending by utilities. They expect rates to continue to go up by 10% a year through the end of the decade. And this is not really a big surprise. It's happening throughout the rest of the world. Worldwide energy prices are going up. US energy prices are going up. A lot of this is driven by the war in Ukraine. And that's just going on, and it's going to continue. What's happening is the U.S. is exporting a lot of natural gas and liquefied natural gas. They export it on tankers to Europe because Russia cut Europe off from their major energy supply, natural gas. So times have been good for solar. Solar makes a lot of sense for people, and solar makes even more sense with the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed in the summer of 2022. The solar investment tax credit was extended at 30% for another 10 years. So that's good through the end of 2032. That tax credit also applies to storage. But the other thing that really happened is there are additional tax credits. They make a lot of sense, and in many cases, direct payments in terms of rebates for things like heat pump water heaters, heat pump HVAC systems, electrical upgrades, induction cooktops, and even new and used electric vehicles. So people throughout the US are going to be very heavily subsidized to trade in their old gas appliances and their old gas cars for more efficient, really clean electrical appliances and vehicles. That means we're going to be using even more electricity. But with the change in net metering that's going into effect on April 13th, 2023, can throw all these benefits of solar out the window. Solar paybacks, just at a high level, are going to increase from an average of 6 years in California to over 12 years. You can kind of see the history of this. And essentially, what's happening is net metering ends. The utilities are changing to a metering program called net billing. And in net billing, they bill you for the regular amount, and they give you only a credit of about 2 cents a kilowatt hour for electricity, compared to 30 or 40 cents a kilowatt hour that they've been historically giving you. So let's go into the details of how net metering used to work, how net metering still works now, where you can actually get a very high reimbursement as long as you sign up quickly, and what's going to happen after April. So this red line basically shows the profile of electricity usage in a typical home. During in the morning, people wake up, you make coffee, you're using electricity, the heats go on, electricity goes up a little bit. Then in the middle of the day, kids go to school, family goes to work, consumption goes down, no lights, you're not heating and cooling your house as much. But when people come home from school and work, electricity usage goes up again. You're turning on the heat, you're cooking, maybe some entertainment things going on, a lot of lights, and you get a lot more electricity usage in the late afternoon and evening. So let's kind of overlay the output of a solar system on top of this curve. You can see that the solar system produces most of its power during solar noon, which is closer to 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It's not exactly at noon because of daylight savings time. So you're getting most of that power production in the middle of the day, and in the evening, not getting any benefit from solar. So we'll talk about what happens there. So this is how the current, still in effect, net metering program works for people putting in solar and for basically anybody that has a solar system. Let's divide in the generation of power into two sections. One, the bottom section, the yellow section, underneath the red curve, is what we call self-consumption. The solar system's generating a lot of power in the middle of the day, and your house is using that power. But the solar generates so much power that you have excess. And guess where that excess goes? It goes backwards through your meter to your neighbors out to the grid. And when that power goes backwards, it's basically selling it back to the utility at 95% of the current retail rate. So for example, for PG&E, PG&E's daytime rate's 24 cents a kilowatt hour. You get a credit of 23 cents a kilowatt hour for all the electricity you sell back to the utility. It's pretty good. And when you look what happens in the afternoon, in the summer, when you're still generating power in the late afternoon, I mean, heck, sometimes you're generating power till 7 o'clock at night, you're getting a credit of 55 cents a kilowatt hour for every kilowatt hour you send back. So if your system is kind of cranking along at 10 kilowatts, you're able to get $5.50 a kilowatt hour if nobody's home, if not, there's nobody using it. So that's why the payback for solar right now under net metering 2 is so fast. Now look what happens when net metering is over. Utilities called it net metering 3. It's also called net billing, but you're getting a de minimis credit. You're only getting 2 cents a kilowatt hour credit for that excess power you sell back. Now, you still benefit from self-consumption, that generation and the consumption under the curve, but everything above that red line, which you used to sell back and get a big credit for, now you get 2 pennies. And what's even worse, in the late afternoon, you've got no way to offset that 55 cent a kilowatt hour and higher electric rates. And you got to keep in mind, these are the current rates. They're going to keep going up at 10%. All right, now, what a lot of people are doing is they're putting in a battery so that you have that power, your own power, instead of selling it back to the utility at 23 cents a kilowatt hour in the middle of the day, you're storing your battery or multiple batteries. And then in the afternoon and evening, when electricity is the most expensive, it's called peak rates. In the afternoon and evening, you don't have to buy power at 55 cents a kilowatt hour. The savings with a battery are very significant. So here's what the California Public Utilities Commission net metering decision was that they made at the end of December after years of negotiation with people in the solar industry and the utilities. They came down, slammed down right on the side of the utilities without any doubt. They reduced the reimbursement rate from 95% of the current retail rate to only 2 cents a kilowatt hour. Now, it's an average of 2 cents. We'll talk about how that's mapped into all the different time periods on the next slide. But you only get 2 cents compared to an average of 23 cents in the middle of the day and 50 cents in the afternoon. You're still able to keep your system running for 20 years and get net metering. That's for anybody that signs up now. But after April 13th, you're going to be stuck with this 2 cents a kilowatt hour reimbursement. So how do you make sure that you get net metering 2 and you're not stuck with the new net billing program? Well, there's 3 things you got to do. You have to make sure that your interconnections are completed and submitted to the utility before April 13th. Second thing is you have to make sure that everything is correct on that contract. And it's pretty complicated. So you want to make sure you've got enough time to get that done the right way. And once that's submitted and accepted by the utility, you have 3 years to complete the systems to qualify for net metering 2. What we're doing at our company is there'll be a little bit of a backlog, but we'll probably be able to crunch through all of the systems we sell and install under net metering 2 by the end of 2023. So you'll have it. Don't worry about it. Now, here's how that 2 cent average works out. It's not a flat 2 cents throughout the year. There's a lot of times when you can actually get way more than 2 cents. I mean, people kind of zoom in on this little green box at 6 o'clock in the evening in September. You can get a credit of $2.54 for energy you sell back to the grid. Sounds great, right? Nope, not that great, because there's no sun. The sun sets at around 5:30 at that time during the year. So it doesn't really do any good when you see these higher reimbursement times, because you're not generating any sunlight. You look in the middle of the day, which is the way it is right now, March, April, May, when your system's really cranking out a lot of power in the middle of the day, you get a fraction of a penny, and sometimes you get nothing. The utility is just basically taking that power and not reimbursing you at all. So huge change. This is really complicated, so just think about it as an average 2 cents a kilowatt hour, but very, very big change. Now, here are the requirements for getting installed under net metering 2. They're slightly different between residential customers and commercial customers. But basically, you have to make sure you have a complete application, a signed contract, a single line diagram. This is an electrical diagram that shows the design of the system, the size of the system, how many solar panels, what kind of inverter, things like that. A complete California Contractors State License Board disclosure document. This is like a 26-page document that the state requires contractors to get signed to make sure that everything's kosher, plus a protection guide, consumer protection guide, and an oversizing attestation. This oversizing attestation is basically if you know you're going to get an EV or putting in a heat pump HVAC system, you can basically say, hey, I'm going to increase the size of the system, and they'll allow you to do that. So that's what you need for residential customers. For commercial customers, it's a little bit different. You can read the details. You don't need the disclosure agreements. You don't need the protection guide, but you do need something called authorization to act on a customer's behalf, which is basically permission to the contractor that they can work on your behalf. This is for commercial customers to get the system installed. Now, the key thing to remember, and this is a little different than it is right now, interconnection contracts have to be submitted by a registered California contractor, not a solar sales company, not somebody who's just knocking on your door looking for leads. It has to be done by a registered contractor. And if it's not, that agreement's going to be incomplete. If the contractor changes, you may also have problems. So make sure that you're working with a company that knows how to do this paperwork. So let's talk about the financial implications. The financial implications are really, really simple and straightforward. Because the reimbursement rate goes from 20 or 30 or 40 cents a kilowatt hour down to 2 cents, the economics, the payback for solar more than doubles. Currently, right now, for many of the systems that we're installing and other contractors are installing, you're looking at paybacks in the 6-year range. Might be a little bit longer for smaller systems. It might be longer for complicated systems. It might be longer for complicated roofs. But 6 or 7 years, that's a pretty good payback. You're looking at a really good return on investment. With the end of net metering, payback is going to go to over 12 years because you're only getting a reimbursement rate of 2 cents instead of a much higher amount. The thing that you can do, and many people are going to be doing this in the future, is you can add a battery on systems that if you kind of don't get around to solar, or if you don't have a house, you are putting solar next year, you can put in a battery. But adding a battery to kind of recapture these benefits is still going to cost a lot of money, and you're not going to see that 6-year payback anymore. No way. Well, you may ask yourself, how did California get here? We're the leading environmental state with the most home solar systems in the US. And now we're allowing utilities to blatantly restrict competition so completely to the point at which it doesn't make a lot of sense to put in solar. Welcome to the world of capitalism gone wrong. PG&E and the other utilities in the state are regulated monopolies. They're ostensibly regulated by the California Public Utilities Commission, but because of the utilities' political contributions to the California government, to the tune of over $30 million over the past few years, from Governor Newsom on down to city and state legislators, utilities have managed to change California policy to enforce their monopoly on electricity generation. Basically, utilities don't want homes and businesses to generate their own rooftop solar because they lose profits. Bummer. They're spending our ratepayer money to lobby the California government, California Public Utilities Commission, to enforce their monopoly. Completely wrong. And you look at what's happening with utility profits, they're continuing to go up. We're looking at PG&E's record revenues, even though they've been bankrupt twice. They've been found criminally negligent for wildfires that have caused many, many deaths. And they're spending money out of control just to generate more profits, while electric rates keep going up. It's kind of a killer. You see what's happening in that previous graph. We're looking at electricity rates that are going to be over $1 a kilowatt hour annual energy consumption of homes, because we're transitioning to electricity and less gas. It's very conceivable that people are going to be looking at energy bills, that's home electricity, natural gas, gasoline for your car, energy bills in excess of $10,000 a year. And why is this? So not only are the kilowatt hour costs going up, but people's usage is going to go up. You trade in that gas car for an electric car, now you got to buy electricity or put solar in, and that's going to, actually, if you have rooftop solar, it's the cheapest way to power your vehicle. But if you have to charge that vehicle from a public charging station, I ran the numbers, it's even more than buying gas. People are going to be putting in heat pump HVAC systems. They're replacing their gas furnaces, heat pump water heaters, induction cooktops, which are better, safer, cleaner than gas stoves. That's all going to increase electricity usage. And if you're not looking at electrifying your home, guess what? Natural gas is going to keep going up because of the war in Ukraine. I don't know how much longer that's going to go, but you look at the worldwide cost of natural gas, it's gone way up. The cost of natural gas in the United States has also gone way up because we're exporting a lot of our gas to Europe, and that it's a worldwide commodity that raises the price. So what happens if you're an existing solar customer? If you're an existing solar customer, you've got solar, you've had it 4, 5, 6 years, you're not affected by the end of net metering in April of 2023. Unless you want to expand your system, because system expansions of 10% or more will also require you to change to the new solar rates if you make this change after April 2023. So basically, if in May of 2023 or the summer, at the end of this year, you say, hey, I'm getting that EV and I want to electrify your home, I want to add more solar panels, you will lose the benefits of net metering. So you got to plan for that. The second thing to think about is if you have a really old system, and I've got customers going back to 2001, if you have a really old system, you can't change that net metering one system and say, all right, now I added 2 solar panels, I want to go on net metering 2. They're not going to allow you to do that. It's sleazy. You have to completely remove that old system and and install a completely new system to qualify for that. That drives me crazy because you're forced to go on this new 2 cents a kilowatt hour net billing reimbursement rate just because you wanted to add a little bit more capacity. I think it's crazy that PG&E forces you to scrap that old system to stay on net metering, but them's the rules. Now, as a result, here's my recommendations. Find a local solar and battery contractor that you trust. If it's Cinnamon Energy System, great. If it's somebody else, great too, because I don't want you to get ripped off for the next 10 or 20 years by these high electricity rates, and you can avoid that with solar. So find a local contractor that knows the local rules, that can fill out the paperwork and do it the right way the first time, because we're looking at a very, very short deadline. That also means that you got to get started right away. April's going to be here really fast. I'm talking about January right now, but it takes time to decide what to do, to sign a contract, and we can turn the contracts around and the interconnection agreements pretty quickly. But you're going to need to get working right away, talking to the contractor that you find that you trust, to get your system designed and get the paperwork filled out the right way. And finally, recommendation, especially we're dealing with the worst winter that I can recall in California. You may want to add a battery to your system for extra savings. Plus, that battery will provide backup power for the next blackout. So I'm Barry Cinnamon, CEO of Cinnamon Energy Systems. Consider us a resource for you to decide what to do, what kind of equipment to get, what you should do. We just want you to benefit from rooftop solar and battery storage, and we don't want you to get screwed by this escalating, continually more and more expensive utility electricity rates. Thank you very much.